3, 2, 1, go. Careful. What are you doing? Are you okay?
Hello and welcome to Power Drifting, the Rally Game podcast. My name is Tom and I'm joined once again in the virtual cockpit by everybody's favourite co-driver. His name is Mike. Mike, how are you?
I am very good, Tom. I am very good. Enjoying is not a good word to use, but I'm enjoying the lockdown that we have currently, a bit of rally gaming.
How better to spend the time than playing rally games?
Indeed.
Yeah. So in this episode, we'll be taking a look at a game that arguably revitalised the rally genre in the current generation, and which took Codemasters on a new path with its best-selling Colin McRae-originated DiRT franchise. I am, of course, talking about DiRT Rally. Mike, before we go, can you just chuck me those keys, please?
Here we go.
Thank you very much. Let's go. Okay, Mike, so DiRT Rally, developed and published by Codemasters and released in April 2015 with a full release later that year in December 2015, and then console ports on the Xbox and the PS4 followed in April 2016. Can you remember when you first heard about DiRT Rally? Can you remember if there was any buzz or anything like that for you?
Yeah, I think it was around the start of this generation, wasn't it? So it was sort of the next generation DiRT game. And I know for me personally, DiRT was a series which I suppose defined the 360 for me. It was a game which I played online a lot. The first game I got 1,000 achievement points on. So it really was a defining game. So for me, the next gen DiRT game. And a game which had an emphasis on rally rather than the sort of circuit racing of the older ones was really interesting. I think it got a big buzz online as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the previous games in the DiRT kind of family. I did mention that this is kind of a continuation of the Colin McRae series, but the games that came before this in the series, the Colin McRae DiRT games, they did kind of go off on a bit of a weird tangent, sort of into like Gymkhana and all that kind of thing, and Land Rush. And by the final game in that series, DiRT Showdown, I was kind of completely turned off by the whole thing because it was all about Pastrana and all these other kind of American stars. Not saying there's anything wrong with these American stars, but it just took it away from the kind of the muddy back roads of Wales, and turned it into this kind of big razzmatazz kind of... It took it away from the core of rallying, which is what drew me to the sport in the first place.
I think I agree, yeah. So I think the DiRT games did what Race Driver did a generation before. So it sort of tried to go outside its own narrow confines of rallying. So it tried to do different types of racing. I actually love the other racing on DiRT and DiRT 2. I'm a really big fan of Land Rush stuff. I'm a big fan of the sort of circuit racing, but it's still not a rally game. For me, the big thing was DiRT 3 tried to go back to rallying, but it mixed it with this really weird Gymkhana, as you said, which just didn't work. It didn't seem to have it wasn't really the same game. It reminds me of a game on the Dreamcast, funny enough, called Four Wheel Thunder, where they had an inside motocross sort of game and an outside game. And then DiRT Showdown, which is actually one of my favourite games of all time, but it is not a rally game. It is a destruction derby game. And it is so completely unlike any rally game or any DiRT game imaginable. You just thought they could have just called it something different. And I think with DiRT Rally, it was the first time they went back to the roots and sort of went, actually, people liked us because we did Colin McRae Rally. Let's go back and do a rally game again. Yeah,
an interesting little tidbit as well that I found out while just doing some research for this episode was that the Mac and Linux versions of DiRT Rally were brought to their respective platforms in 2017, which is like a full year after the console ports. And it was actually developed by Feral Interactive that did the Grid Autosport version for the Switch, which is a fantastic port. So, Anyway, before we continue, let's have a quick look at the whole of the Colin McRae lineage, shall we? So we've got Colin McRae in 1998, we've got Colin McRae 2 in 2000, McRae 3 in 2002, Colin McRae Rally 04 in 2003, 2005 in 2004. Then we go into the Colin McRae DiRT series starting in 2007, Colin McRae DiRT 2 in 2009. Then we've got DiRT 3 in 2011. DiRT Showdown 2012, and then there's a weird kind of re-release of Colin McRae Rally on iOS devices and PC in 2013. Have you played that?
I have, yeah.
What's it like?
Yeah, it's a rally game on the iPhone and on Apple devices. And to be honest with you, it's until Rush Rally came along, it wasn't really anything to write home about. It was quite a poor mobile port.
Okay. So then in 2015, that's when Dirt Rally hit our screens, and it was actually before Dirt 4. So it was kind of, they went in one direction with Dirt Rally and a more of a simulation style game, and then went back to Dirt 4 with a more kind of slightly looser control scheme. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Before we get into the main meat of this game, though, just want to talk about some of the competitors on the current gen systems, or rather the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Because, Mike, I don't know about you, but again, being a massive fan of Rally, when these new systems, or rather the current gen systems, were quite new, I kept an eye out for what a new Rally game might look like. And then when they started to appear, I was quite underwhelmed by them, certainly with the WRC series. And then when Sebastian Loeb came out, I was completely underwhelmed by that as well. And I think that might have actually stoked a fire in me that I was so hyped for a Rally game from Codemasters that this was going to be the one that showed the rest how to do it. And I think in a way it did, because since Dirt came out on the current gen systems, certainly on the consoles, the other manufacturers of Rally games have really upped their game. I don't know if this was the catalyst or not, but for me, the games that came out from other developers prior to Dirt Rally were substandard for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think we actually talked about it quite a lot at the time. I think myself and you were exchanging messages at the time. Whenever a new Rally game was announced, we were sort of going, "Oh, there's a new Rally game coming out." And to be honest with you, I think WRC and Sebastian Loeb Rally were both, I'm going to say, poor. I think it's not necessarily the best definition for them. I don't think they were poor games as such. But I think it was very much like a sort of an EA effect. When EA bring new sports titles out on new consoles, they sort of they go back to an extent until they can actually get used to how the console works. They seem to go backwards a little bit, which is always quite jarring, I imagine, for PC gamers, because obviously you've got the sort of continuation of games, and suddenly the games change and go worse because of the fact that consoles have come out. But to me, that's how Sebastian Loeb and WRC felt. I think WRC, they changed the developer, didn't they, with WRC as well?
Yeah, I think it was Milestone, and then they went to Kiloton.
Yeah, both those developers are people who like racing games, will know both those developers quite well. Milestone especially have put out a ton of racing games, and I like the games. I'm a big fan of their sort of motocross games, but actually they're probably mid-tier kind of games, and never really the top tier. And I think with Codemasters, you're getting, it's a badge of honor almost with or badge of quality, I should say, with Codemasters. I've been a Codemasters racing fan, or Codemasters fan, since I was 8 years old. But I think every single time Codemasters bring out one of these good games, they don't forget the key bit, which is the fun aspect. Now, I know we'll talk about Dirt Rally in a bit, and maybe the fun bit isn't quite the main thrust of the game, but they always have the ability to actually bring out games which are really, really fun and don't just rely on having a license or having some gimmicky sort of things in their games.
Yeah, also massive fan of Codemasters games, going all the way back, to the original Colin McRae, all through the touring car games, even up to Grid on the PS4, which I think is a phenomenal game. I absolutely love that game. But yeah, as you mentioned, Mike, this game started on the PC way back in April 2015 in early access. Which platforms have you played it on? I've only played it on the PS4. What have you played? Have you played it on the PC as well, or just the Xbox?
I played it on the PS4 and Xbox One. I think I may have played it on the PC. My brother's PC. I don't have a gaming PC strong enough. I'm not part of the master race, but I think I might have played it on PC as well. Yeah.
I think it's important to mention that, though, just because I think this is considered to be almost like it was given by God to the PC gamers originally.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of, not the scraps brushed off the table for the console gamers, but PC gamers held this aloft as kind of like the pinnacle of rally games for a while before we console gamers got our version. And we will talk about some reviews in a little while, but for all intents and purposes, it is pretty much the same game. There's not all the modifications and that kind of thing that you can do with the PC version, but it's as near as damn it.
Turn right for through dip, don't cut narrows. 80 crest. Into right 5, left 6.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the history of the game and the platforms that we've played it on. But now let's talk about the game itself. Now, Dirt Rally is quite a large game. It does have a couple of standard gameplay modes, but it does have quite an extensive career mode as well. And the standard play modes are Standard Rally, as you would imagine. You've got a Rally Cross mode, and you've got a Hill Climb mode. As you play through those modes, you will come across several different environments, of which these are they. So you've got Powys in Wales, Monte Carlo in Monaco. Apologise for the pronunciation here, but Baumholder Baumholder, in Germany, Jamsa or Hamza in Finland, Värmland in Sweden, and Argolis in Greece. Those are the environments that you can play in the rally mode. And each of those locations has 12 or so courses with a variation on whether it's a sprint course, a long course, forward or backwards. And you can change the environment effects such as weather, time of day, as you would expect. Mike, I ask you this every single time, and I know exactly what you're going to say. Any favourites in that little lot?
That's going to be Finland, isn't it? I think. No, I think as I've mentioned before, I love Finland on every rally game. It's the true rallying environment. But I think actually the six ones they've picked are really interesting because they are, I suppose, they're standard locations in rally games. The German tarmac roads, you've got the snow in Sweden, the dusty Greek roads, obviously the mud in Wales, which sums up Wales perfectly. But it's, and obviously Monaco as well. But I think that they didn't stretch out. Some rally games will try and do something a bit weird. They'll try and add China to it, or they'll add sort of, a Pacific island randomly to it. They went with the core, and I think that sums up the game in terms of the fact that this is a game made for rallying fans by rallying fans, and they've picked pretty much the six destinations you'd expect, but that's great.
Yeah. I also noted that in Wales there is no mode that lets you play with a sunny sky. It's always cloudy. It's always raining.
Wales. That's great. real life simulator.
Moving on from those locations, we also have a hill climb with Pikes Peak, massive mountain, which is quite good fun, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then, as well as that, we have the rather excellent Rallycross mode. And with that, you get 3 different environments, each with its own different variation of the course. You've got a full course, a clubman, and a junior course. And you've got Lydden Hill in England. You've got Hell in Norway, which is fantastically well named. And is it Hollies? Sweden. God, I'm going to get crucified for this pronunciation. It's a good job there's no Japanese names in this game, isn't it? But the Rallycross is an interesting mode because obviously, as anyone listening to this podcast will already know, it pits you against a grid of other racers, which can be quite fierce. And I think it's great fun, to be honest. It takes you out of the standard rally point-to-point racing and pits you against 3 AI competitors. It's quite good fun, kind of bumper-to-bumper or door-to-door racing that can see some quite spectacular crashes if you don't take those corners at the right angle. Any thoughts on the Rallycross, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's one of the first games they really tried to put the Rallycross into. I think Rallycross sort of became quite big in the mid 2010s. What decade do you call that? The teens? I'm not quite sure. But in the middle of that decade, I think Rallycross became really, really big, and it was probably even overtook Rally in terms of popularity online, from what I can see from people actually talking about it. So I think they tried to really put it into it. It's not a fully fledged Rallycross mode as such. There's not a ton of courses. There's not a ton of environments. But they definitely try to. It's interesting with dirt games that they always have this. I always think dirt games, although rallying's great, when Codemasters get competitive racing and they get it right, they do it really, really well. Again, going back to that point of it being fun, and I felt that it was they didn't make the game so that it was, the Rallycross side of it is very much about bumper to bumper, and almost feels like they've put some real time into making sure that this was a competitive element to it, because rallying is always as a game is always, it's not really a competitive thing, you know what I mean? It's not something which you can sort of compete against someone straight away and have that sort of visible sort of competitive edge. With Rallycross, they really try to push it, and obviously I know that's what the sport is in real life. I know it's not something which Codemasters have invented, but the way they've done it in this game, although it's racing based and very realistic, they have still made it so it's a video game. I think it's the most video game part of the game, if that makes sense. Yeah,
and just to lead on from that, I think it's a nice palate cleanser from the sort of the single player, you on your own going down a country track. Yeah. Exactly, it's nice to be able to trade paint with some actual visible adversaries on the same course. Okay, so we've got the free game modes, then we've got Rally, Hill Climb and Rallycross. I did mention earlier that you do have quite an in-depth career mode where you get to choose your crew and you get different championships that you can enter. There's a whole kind of system where you have to earn money from races and fix your car, upgrade your car. It's very in-depth, and it's kind of what you would expect from a current gen rally title. It doesn't do anything spectacularly different from any other kind of recent rally game I've played. but it does the job. There's always a gameplay in there, so yeah, it's a pretty standard career mode really. It's not as in depth as something like WRC8 where you have to build your own kind of garage and all that kind of stuff, but it's good fun. It does the job. So.
Left 5, 100 past junctions. Right 5 over crest. Care left 3, don't cut past junction.
Okay, let's move on to the types and range of vehicles that you can expect to use in this game. There's a huge number of different categories here, actually. So you've got vehicles from the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, Group B, which itself is actually split down into two other groups, which are four-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. You've got Group A, R4, cars from the 2000s, and cars from the 2010s. And you've got a handful of vehicles in each group, so it's not like you've got 20 vehicles in each category, but it's nice that you've got the variety. And I always ask you what your favourites are, Mike, but I'm going to tell you what my favourites are first of all. I'm a big fan of the slower front-wheel drive vehicles, just because I find them very easy to handle, and I just think it's a lot of fun to play with them. Yeah. And so some of my favourites would be the Mini Cooper S and the Lancia Fulvia from the 1960s class. Although I do have a favourite from the Group A, which is the classic 1995 Colin McRae Impreza. Not a big fan of the rear-wheel drive cars because I find them incredibly hard to control, but that's just me. Yes. What about you, Mike? You got any favourites?
Well, it's not just you, Tom. I really cannot drive the rear-wheel drive cars in this game. I find it impossible to do it. I think with me, the original Mini, without a doubt, I think the Mini is a fantastic car in any racing game. It's my first port of call. And I think obviously the Impreza as well, simply because of the fact that every single rally game, I'm very boring in my choices of cars because I'm always picked same. I pick Minis and Imprezas. Because it's basically what I drive in rally games. But it's one thing I will say is that they have done. What's really interesting, obviously, is that they do have licenses for most of these cars, or for all these cars, and they are pretty much. I can't think of a single iconic rally car that's not in the game.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, there's obviously going all the way back to the 1960s, and you can scroll through all of these, and you'll recognise at least one in each category. So that's really cool, to be honest. And just touching on what we said there about the handling of the rear-wheel drive cars, that kind of brings us nicely into the gameplay aspects of Dirt, which is what it's kind of infamous for. And that is, I would say that it errs more on the sim side of things, and it has a disgustingly steep learning curve, and it's extremely unforgiving at times. I was aware of this when it first came out on the PS4, and I got it kind of day one. I'd heard like rumblings, and I'd seen forum posts and reviews that it wasn't the kind of game where you could just pick it up and just kind of Sega rally your way around a course. That certainly isn't what you do here. It is a game that you need to put the time in to learn how to do it, and to the point where there's actually a full tutorial mode full of videos showing you how to basically drive a rally car. I've never driven a rally car in real life. However, these videos are pretty comprehensive on the different techniques that you should be employing if you want to be successful in Dirt Rally, because let's be honest, sometimes it feels like less of a game and more of an actual driving test. Would you agree with that, Mike?
I would, yeah. I think it's one of the big things about the game when it came out was the fact that it was positioned as a sim type game. Got rid of flashbacks, got rid of things like that. But actually, I like how you said it was a very steep learning curve. It's near vertical. The first, you can sort of get past. I think is it Clubman, the first level of the game? Yeah. The very first levels, you can pretty much do. I managed to do them. I managed to do relatively well. After that, not a chance. Straight away, off of cliffs every 5 seconds. It is really, really good. But like you said, it's the kind of game which rewards patience and rewards trying again. As with any racing game, I suppose, to an extent. It really does reward you putting the time in to invest about how to handle the cars. And if you think you're a rally expert and all you've played is console games, you will play Dirt Rally and you will realise, not so much.
Yeah, I like watching videos on YouTube of people who are actually good at this game, which I am not one of them. Yeah. And I'm just amazed at how good these racers are, and just I watch them and try to kind of mimic their techniques, and it's just I haven't got it. I can't do it. Whether or not it's because they're using a wheel or what, and this and the other, I don't know. But
interesting actually, Tom. This is a slight aside, but it's quite an interesting point actually. I don't know if you've been watching on Twitter and other sites. The Solbergs have been racing rally games.
Yes,
recently.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And they've actually been playing with the camera view outside the car. And when people were sort of like, all of these sort of internet warriors were sort of saying to them, "Oh, you shouldn't be playing like that," telling professional rally drivers how to drive a rally car. But they were actually saying, well, actually, as a rally car driver, we actually like to see what the back of the car's doing. And you can't do that in a simulator. If you're actually inside the sort of cockpit view, you can't see that. So they actually race it with the back of the car shown as well, which I think goes against everything we've been told, and we've been told to assume about rally games. Just an interesting side there.
No, it's a very interesting side, and yes, I did see that as well. I am the kind of person who will instantly go to the cockpit view or the bonnet cam, because it's just how I've always played racing games, even in things like Grid, or when I play Ride 3 on the PS4, I play it from the helmet cam, just because that's just how I've always played racing games, really. It does feel slightly alien to me to play it from the outside view, especially this game. Other games, such as Gravel, I will always play from the external view, just because it's more of an arcade game. But here, it's almost backward, seeing the Solbergs play it from the external view, but myself playing it from the internal view. So maybe I will give it a go from the external view and see if that makes me any better than I am currently, because I'm pretty pathetic at this game outside of the very low-powered slow cars. So if you are thinking about picking this game up and want to give it a go, then by all means do, because it's a great game. However, be prepared to put a lot of time in, and as Mike said earlier on, as you move up through the different difficulty stages and you get more powerful cars to play with, you will find yourself going off the course a hell of a lot, and over cliffs and into trees, and having terminal damage and going down ravines and having to reset your car. And I remember when I first got the game and I was playing it, and I can remember the first time I actually got a green section on one of the rallies. It was almost like I'd won the World Cup. I was like, yes, I'm not behind the pack. But then instantly I kind of went off a cliff and got like a 15-second penalty or something, and I was back at the bottom of the pack again. I was like, oh my God, this is so tough. I can remember when I was still on Twitter, I remember getting a green section and actually pausing the game and taking a photograph of it and tweeting it. Look, I got a green section on Dirt Rally. I'm a god.
And that's the thing, is that it's most racing games, most games, I suppose, they go for that quick endorphin rush of, oh, you've done brilliantly in a game. Dirt Rally doesn't do that at all. I think Dirt Rally does what racing games should do more of, which is actually, I've been playing Project Cars 2 recently because it's free on Xbox Live, and I get Xbox Game Pass, and it's a really, really good, another indicator of a game which, if you put the settings to the correct settings, authentic settings, it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't sort of make you think that you're brilliant all the time. And I think that's really what racing games need to do, because racing drivers don't always win. No one wins every single race they race in, and Dirt Rally understands that and really pushes that to the fore. Yes, you can be amazing, you can probably win quite a few races if you're really good at the game, but even then you're gonna have some races where actually the terrain beats you.
An interesting point here as well is that maybe, just maybe, the developers kind of took these criticisms, or rather comments, about the difficulty level of the game and kind of tweaked them slightly, because I do have an inkling that Dirt Rally 2, which is a game I also own, is slightly easier and slightly more beginner friendly. I don't know if you found that, but I certainly do. This game, it kicks my ass every time I play it, but I can get into Dirt 2 and I'm all right. I'm not the best in the world, but I'm all right.
I think I'm actually slightly opposite of that. I think I've bought Dirt Rally 2. I've had Dirt Rally 2 since launch, but I've bought the add-on packs and whatever it was this week, and I'm finding Dirt Rally 2 an absolute nightmare. I cannot drive a car in that game without crashing. Dirt Rally 1, I'm not much better, but at least I can get past a couple of the Greek stages and not crash into a tree. But I think it's all about, I haven't played racing games on the Xbox for quite a while, so I think it's probably just me getting back or into that sort of frame of mind.
80. Turn left one long cut, 60. Right 5 long, 100 through dead. Care, turn left one, don't cut.
Okay, Mike, so we've spoken a little bit about the career mode, the gameplay. Let's talk about the aesthetics now of this game. Let's talk first of all about the sound. I genuinely think that the sound here is absolutely excellent. The pace notes are spot on. The engine and environmental effects are just fantastic. It's what you expect from a sort of a AAA rally game, from people who obviously know rally and know what rally sounds like. I can't really fault it, to be honest, even down to sort of the menu music. I don't find anything wrong or insulting about the sound in this game at all. I think it's great.
It's a signature of the series, isn't it? Dirt, I remember the first Dirt came out and it was in the Guinness Book of Records as being the most the most sound files for any game.
Wow, is that right?
Yeah, several thousand at the time. It was the most. It was something like several thousand every time you crashed. There was several thousand different sound bits played. It was in the Guinness Book Records. It was quite a big thing at the time. The Dirt games always have incredible sound, which is a really, and all Codemasters racing games actually. I'm thinking about games like the Formula One games as well. They also have really really strong audio.
On that note as well, I will say that I'm one of those gamers that if I'm playing like a football game or generally another kind of racing game, invariably I'll turn the sound off. I'll put it on really low and just put like a podcast on or some music or a video from YouTube. With rally games, obviously the very nature of the sport, because you need the pace notes.
Yeah,
I don't do that, so I have to listen to the sound, and it's only when you listen to the sound and you're immersed in the game that you actually realise that. You stop and think about it. It is actually really, really good, and I suppose because that component of the game is so important, the sound aspect of a rally game, it's as important as the gameplay, as important as the visuals. Then it needs to be on a level, and here they nailed it, dead on.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree completely. I'm actually very similar to you. I don't play most games with music from the game or sound from the game. We talk about games we play in the past. As a game I have a popular one of my favourite games of all time, MSR on Dreamcast. I now actually listened to the soundtrack of that game about 5 years after I got the game, because I was listening to several CDs. So in my mind, the only sound actually is in that game is one track that I played and a CD I had at the time. So yeah, with rally games though, you have to. It's the only genre, with possibly a couple of exceptions, first-person shooters possibly, that I have to play with the sound fully up. I would usually play rally games with headphones on, because I have to actually have that sort of immersive experience.
That's an interesting point you raise there, Mike, about not playing MSR with the sound on. I hope Richard Jacks isn't listening to this, because all his work was for naught. I
listened to one song, Fallen Angel. It was a
yes, I know exactly
cheesy metal song. And I listened to that. So when I was on forums several years later and people were saying, "Oh, MSR music's amazing," I was going, "Oh yeah, it was alright. It was a bit repetitive though." I realised it was because I wasn't playing it with the same.
Let me. Is it this one? She's my fallen angel.
That's the one.
Yes.
That's the one.
I apologise to anyone listening for my singing. Let's move rapidly on, Mike. Let's talk about the visuals in this game again.
Yeah,
they are pretty damn good. I mean, this game is current gen. It looks fantastic. It's by far the best looking rally game that was out at that point. It looks way better than the screen-tearing mess that was the WRC games. Sebastian Loeb, I've mentioned the weird glitches in that many times. This game was, light years ahead of those in terms of quality and just the solidness of the environments and the way the cars looked. Everything, it's great. I mean, it still looks great now, even next to things like WRC 8 and Dirt Rally 2. I think it actually looks a bit cleaner than Dirt Rally 2 for some reason, but
I think with actually this generation of games, I mean, can you tell much difference between games that came out 4 years ago than now? I can't personally.
No.
They're amazing graphics.
Yeah, I think that the one thing, I mean, obviously, if people are listening to this who are PC gamers, then we know that the PC version is, light years ahead of what's on even the current gen consoles like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, in terms of different visual effects and resolutions and that kind of thing. But as console gamers, when I first played Dirt Rally, I was really just kind of blown away just by how good it looks and how good the kind of like the lighting effects were. So I know we spoke about this in the Rally Sport 2 episode where the headlight effects were quite good. Here there's something else, because if you're on a pitch black country lane and you blow out both your headlights, you might as well just retire, because you can't see anything. And it's that kind of detail that is, obviously it can be annoying, but it actually makes you a better racer, because you need to protect those headlights, because otherwise your race is over. I don't usually get into like the sort of technical side of things, but what is good about this game is that the developers did try to hit 60 frames a second across both the PS4 and the Xbox One, which they actually did, and I think that's important for a rally game. And again, not hugely technical, but I know that the PS4 version originally ran at 1080p, and the Xbox One version had sort of like a dynamic resolution that went between 900p and 1080. But I believe that's fixed with the Xbox One X version. I couldn't find it on the Xbox One Enhanced for X master list, but I know that Dirt Rally 2 is 4K enabled. So I'm guessing that they've kind of done some tinkering with this. I might be wrong, but I would imagine they have. I'm guessing you didn't see any issues with the Xbox One version you played, did you?
No, so I've played through quite a bit on PS4 and Xbox One, so I can't remember much difference. But I have played on the Xbox One. I've got a Pro and an X.
Right.
I played through both games relatively recently, and I say played through. I played a small amount, and I couldn't tell any difference, to be honest with you. So I think if anything, they're both running 1080p. But the most important thing to remember is the 60 frames per second. It is smooth as butter, which is the most important thing about a rally game.
The only reason I bring up that whole 900 and 1080 and all these different differences between the PS4 and the Xbox version, because I remember having a conversation with you a couple of years ago about, I think it was WRC 6. And I was complaining about how much screen tearing there was on the PS4 version.
Yes,
and you had the Xbox version. You said there wasn't any in the Xbox version. And
That's
that
right.
kind of made me think,
Yeah.
wow, what's going on here then? So it's good to know that, the two versions of Dirt are basically on a level, regardless of which platform you play it on. Just as a small addendum to that, then, you've got great weather effects. You've got, a great amount of detail in the environments. Trackside details are fantastic. There's some of the Germany tracks. The draw distance is just incredible. You can see these tents and crowds going off for miles into the distance, and it just looks amazing. Everything about the game looks great, to be honest. You've got really detailed vehicle models, deformable bodies, bits hanging off your car, the glass effects when the windscreens break and shatter. It's at the top tier, isn't it, really, of rally games and how they look.
It is, yeah. I think I've always tried and put my little geography bit in each time. The venues on this game, they look real life. I think it's as simple as that. There's nothing you can really say about it. There's a little bit maybe where the Codemasters have a sort of thing where the I'm going to say NPCs. It's not an RPG, but the sort of crowd, they look that sort of slightly wooden effect, I think.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean. And it's like this, it's the same kind of people repeated over and over again.
Exactly, which is a minor thing. You know what I mean? It's a very, very minor thing. But actually, the environment, you feel like you're in Greece. I've never been to Greece, but you feel like you're in the sort of mountains of Greece. You feel like you're in Germany. You can sort of you can smell the lederhosen. That's how it is.
Just on that note as well, I did notice it's one of those games that this is one of those effects that you don't notice it until you see it, but then you're kind of glad that it's there. It's that effect that if you hit a barrier and there's people behind that barrier, the people will kind of like wince away.
Yes.
I first noticed that in Project Gotham 3, I think it was,
Yeah.
on the Xbox 360. And if I notice it, then I'm like, yeah, great, that's attention to detail. But if it's not there, it's so jarring when you hit one of the barriers and then people just do not move. It's such a small thing, but it's also kind of, it breaks the kind of illusion or the immersion.
Yeah, turn left one, don't cut, opens 100. Caution, tight chicane, right entry, 150. Caution, tight chicane, left entry, 200. 60 crest. Pass junction. Right 3, don't cut.
Okay, Mike, we've spoken at great length about the visuals and the sound. Let's talk a little bit about the VR support for this game. Now, I know the PC version has VR support, but we've only played, I think we've both only played the PSVR version.
That's right, yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. So I'll let you go first. What are your opinions of the PSVR? I know what your opinions on PSVR in general are, but what about this game?
So I for those who don't know, I actually do love VR. I love PSVR, but I find it makes me feel sick. So that's my main issue with it. But I actually stayed up all night on the Codemasters forums waiting for the PSVR patch to come out, because it was after the game came out. They released a patch, or an add-on pack, sorry, not a patch, to allow VR support. So I think the first thing to mention is the fact that the game runs really well in PSVR. I think that's a given to an extent, because I think they don't want to have games that have got really bad frame rates in VR. So obviously it's going to have a good performance. The only weird thing for me about the game is the fact that it doesn't draw the back of the car, unless that's changed recently. It hasn't changed. Excellent. That was a bit weird and a bit jarring for me. But actually, what I think about the VR, I think this is probably the best example of VR that I've played. I played through Drive Club on PSVR for about 4 weeks. It's my 90% of my time on VR was Drive Club, and I absolutely loved it. I know some people didn't like it, but actually I thought it was amazing. And for me, Dirt Rally was it was at my house, and we had me and my brother. My brother's massively into VR games, and so he was around as well. And it was one of those moments where you sort of take the headset off and you go, wow. I mean, It really was amazing. For me personally, it gave me massive motion sickness, and since that time I haven't had to play VR games since, which is a sort of double-edged sword with me. And I think they put in about the fact you could have a co-driver who would do the sort of pace notes on a sort of rhythm style game, if I remember rightly. It's been a while now since I've played it, but I believe you can actually do it on a rhythm style where the co-driver can actually time their presses, so it actually gives you the directions. And if you don't time it in the correct way, it doesn't give you directions. You have no pace notes given to you. I remember doing this with me and my wife, and my wife was actually giving me, and she got it wrong, and I drove into a tree. It was I remember it quite well. It was quite. I think my 6-year-old nephew also tried to do it for my brother as well, which didn't go down very well either. But that was a really nice, cool part to it, and the entire thing I just thought was amazing how they brought something to life. You feel like you're driving. I remember distinctly driving on one of the Greek tracks, and I remember just driving over this sort of like ridge. And I just literally looking down and thinking, oh, I'm several hundred feet in the air. And I think I must have done the entire course at like 10 miles an hour because I was so scared to go over the height. But I think it's the experience for me is probably one of the greatest experiences I've had in gaming. It really is. It's that good. And I think that anyone who wants to give VR a go, this is a great way of playing it.
I completely agree with everything you just said there, Mike. This is, for me, probably the best VR experience there is on the PS4 that I've played. You mentioned Drive Club. Before this game, it was Drive Club VR. Fantastic. I played so many different VR games. When I got my VR headset, I was like, I'm going to try everything out. And I tried things like Doom VFR, and I was like, oh, what's this? Loads of other different VR games. And then it was only like driving game, like, right, I'm in the cockpit. Brilliant. This is what I need. So when the VR add-on or patch came for DiRT, I was like, yeah, I'm all over that. And just like you, I was absolutely blown away by it. I didn't particularly like the fact there's no car behind you, as you mentioned, which is a bit weird. But I actually find the game to be a little bit easier in VR mode, just because you have the ability to kind of, I don't know, you get the ability to kind of almost see around corners because you can kind of move your head and the view changes with your head movement.
You feel the track. I don't know if you felt the same, Tom, but I felt like I could feel where the track was going. I could almost, even though you can't, because it's not that high tech, I could almost feel like I could see where the sort of slight bumps were going to be in the road. A really weird experience.
Yeah, and it's almost because you are kind of independent of the cockpit. It's your head is independent of the thing. In when you're playing it in normal mode, it's like the camera just shakes up and down. But in VR mode, it's like you are inside a 3D space, so the car is moving around you, but you've still got control. And I don't know how to articulate that any better, but it's just a really nice experience. It's a nice feeling game to play in VR for me. Yeah. I'm sure that there's people who have played the PC version with a much higher resolution headset and with way better frame rate. And I'm sure that the game is even better on a PC. But for us pros down here with our PSVR headsets, I think this is about as good as it gets for for VR driving games. I've played some terrible ones. Have you played what's it called? Moto Racer 4? In VR?
No, I haven't. No, I only played. Like I said, unfortunately, Dirt Rally. This is the double-edged sword I was speaking about. Dirt Rally has destroyed my ability to play rally games. Not rally games. I have played rally games since. I can't play VR games. Sorry, right. Because it's to me, I don't know whether it was because of the fact I just played the VR so much in the first few weeks I had it. But for me, as soon as I played this game, I just felt. I properly felt ill, and I was really quite ill afterwards. A bit weird. It might not have anything to do with it at all, but I think now my mind's now thinking it's going to be because of that. It's a weird one for me.
I'm waiting for the day they put a VR patch out for Dirt Rally 2. That'll be amazing. Yeah. Anyway, so VR, it's well worth a play. Get some of that if you've got the ability to do so.
80, crest. Left 4 over crest, don't cut. 80. Right 6, don't cut, 80, bump past junction, don't cut, and dip, right 5, 60 past junction, 80 crest, turn left 2, don't cut, 100.
Let's move on to some reviews, Mike. Let's see what the gaming press said about Dirt Rally on its release. So I've got 2 reviews here. We've got one review for the PS4 version, and we've got one for the PC version, the original. Yep. So I'll read out the PC review first. This is just a quick sort of summary, final thoughts and verdict. This is from PC Gamer. So the excerpt reads, Dirt Rally then has a bold title. It's a statement. It's explicitly a rally game, not a Gymkhana game, not a trucks game, not a hooning game. A rally game where everyone takes it seriously. And in this, it succeeds. Unfortunately though, in physics and handling detail, it falls a little flat. The lack of any sort of precarious feel when flying over ice and mud is an absolute shame, and the amount of force assistance is disappointment. Anyone waiting for the new Richard Burns will need to carry on waiting. If you're after a successor to the old Colin McRae games or Rally Sport Challenge though, Dirt Rally is a strong offering, and the score is 8 out of 10, or rather 80%. And then we've got a review here for the PS4 version from Eurogamer.net. They say, Dirt Rally transcends its simplistic presentation to offer one of the most engaging and dramatic representations of the motorsport yet. A muddy, plucky sim with an island tough mentality cannot compete with the moneyed luxury of today's Japanese and American supercar racers in terms of polygon counts. It has neither Gran Turismo's lavish roster nor Forza's luxurious presentation, but the stories it tells, you'll never forget them. And then it gives the game a recommended. And that review was actually written by Simon Parkin, who's incidentally the author of the Dreamcast Collected Works book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Should we give our verdicts out of 10 for this game?
Yeah, I'm still a bit shocked by those reviews, to be honest with you, Tom. I thought they were very odd reviews, but I think I'm going to give my review. I think I'm going to give it on the basis of the fact that I think the game's great. I think the VR mode is fantastic. I definitely don't think the game is a successor to Colin McRae and Rally Sport Challenge. I think that's a weird take there.
I thought that as well. That's
the PC Gamer Master Race coming back to the fore, I think. But for me, I think on the basis of what it does well, it'd be a really high score. But actually, I think that the difficulty level, the near vertical learning curve, and the fact that actually it does take away some of the more fun moments for me personally. I like the sort of land rush events. I like that kind of thing. So for me personally, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
No, I would totally agree with what you just said. I think when it came out, it was definitely the best rally game on consoles, on this current gen anyway. And after the disappointment of the previous games, such as I've mentioned, Sebastian Loeb and the WRC games, it was nice to have an actual decently performing and well-playing rally game. But as you say, Mike, the intense difficulty spike did kind of take a little bit of the fun out of it, and still does, to be honest. It's not you could not describe Dirt Rally in any way as a fun game.
No.
However, it's a good game. It's competent at what it does, and for that reason, I would give it a 8 out of 10. So yeah, respectable scores from myself and Mike, 7 and an 8. So yeah, Dirt Rally, play it. It's good, and it's quite cheap now as well.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so it feels like a bit of a relief to have gotten one of the big boys out of the way, don't you think, Mike? It was this one was hanging over me. Don't know about you.
Yeah, I think it's one of the games where, if you're going to do a rally podcast like we have, I think there's always going to be some games which are sort of the big names, and I think Dirt Rally was the sort of modern gen, the big name of the modern gen. I'm sure
there's things we forgot. I mean, as we always say, we're not experts in rallying. We're not, we're not going to get down into the sort of the nitty gritty of racing techniques and racing lines and all that kind of thing. We're just gamers who like to play rally games, and obviously we've kind of given this a bit of almost like a sort of a surface level appraisal. But if you want to go deeper, then there's destinations on the internet that will give you far more information than we ever could. I suppose the best way of getting more information is just to play the game yourself. So, yeah. What's our next game going to be on our special stage episode?
I believe our next game is going to be a game which we both picked up this week, which is a new release on the Switch called Super Pixel Racers. We have a lot to talk about already.
Yes, we do. Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Mike, for your time. And if you want to find our previous episodes, you can find us at powerdriftingpodcast.com, or you can find us on iTunes or Spotify, and you can find us on Twitter at powerdriftpod. Mike, you've also got your own Twitter account. What is it?
My Twitter account is at space_turnip. That's space_turnip. Feel free to send me hate mail.
Yes, please do send Mike hate mail. Okay, until next time, we're out of here. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
That wasn't too bad. Doing?
I've actually got a sound effect of some keys, of me catching some keys, and then
Doing?
It has neither Gran Turismo. Fucking hell! All right, I'll start again.